Now we were going to talk about stakeholders next, as you thought it was an important one, but also you thought that um, resources were important, and I think we both agree probably that that cost is important in the context of how much money you have to do something. So before we dive into stakeholders, uh, I'd like to suggest that we talk about which of these is actually most important, if that has a meaning at all. So uh, why don't you kick off?
Certainly, balancing these elements is crucial. Scope defines the project's boundaries and deliverables. Objectives align with strategic goals. Timelines set the pace. And resources, including budget, determine what's feasible. Arguably, scope sets a foundation as it informs what objectives, timelines, and resources are needed. However, the importance of each can vary depending on the project's context. For instance, in a highly regulated environment, timelines might take precedence. In a resource constrained scenario, budget could become the dominant factor. In your experience, which of these elements have you found to be most pivotal in project success?
Yeah, that's very clear. Yeah, and thank you. Let's use budget because I didn't want to use cost, so that's a better word for it for now. And also those stakeholders. Remember that was one of the ones that came up that was clearly important from our discussion around timelines. It was clear that really timelines only make sense when they fundamentally matter to the stakeholder and or the buyer and or the ultimate recipient. Um, that justifies putting stakeholders a long way up the top, but maybe you could argue you put that at the top because you put in timelines. So then let's come to budget. Um, Budget's an interesting one when you compare it to resources because you could make a case for that if you have enough budget and the project is still worth doing, which is a big if, then there's a sense in which you can just buy it as much resource as you need, you could outsource it. So there's a sense in which budget could, if you like, outbid resources. And there's a sense in which stakeholders is less important because so long as you're really thinking about timelines in the way that we said. So I would make a bid for, I've talked myself into it, that budget we should talk about next, and then um, resources, and then stakeholders. But what do you think of that? And please argue against that if you disagree.
You've laid out a compelling case. Budget does often hold a pivotal role because it directly impacts the project's feasibility and scope. With sufficient budget, many constraints can be mitigated by outsourcing, acquiring additional resources, or extending timelines. It can also be a lever to address stakeholder concerns, provided that their interests align with the project's financial parameters. Focusing on budget first makes sense, especially since it can dictate the availability of resources and shape the project's boundaries. Following that, discussing resources in terms of how to optimize them within budgetary constraints would be a natural progression. Finally, we can address stakeholders, examining how their interests and influence shape project priorities and outcomes. This sequence seems logical, but it ultimately depends on the project's specific context. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's good, and I think that's a good reminder you made me at the end there. Let's pick that up. Let's pick budget up tomorrow then. Can you just give me a parting thought then about, if you like, even looking beyond that horizon of budget, resources, and stakeholders? What's likely your next candidate for the most important thing after that we discuss later?
Looking beyond budget, resources, and stakeholders, the next key concept could be risk management. It's crucial for identifying, assessing, and prioritizing uncertainties that could impact the project. Effective risk management allows for proactive strategies to mitigate potential issues, safeguarding project objectives. It's a discipline that underpins all other aspects, ensuring that the project remains resilient in the face of challenges. Perhaps this could be our next area to explore after we tackle budget. What do you think?
That's really interesting because that's not, for me, the one I would next think of in terms of importance if the others are covered. But yeah, I see the strength of your challenge there. So yeah, so let's pick that up later. You may well be right, of course. So anyway, let's speak tomorrow about budget. Thank you.